Greetings fellow RC enthusiasts. This video is going to cover the RC Light System serial expander. We're going to look at how you connect it, how you set it up with various different radio systems, how you configure it to work with those radio systems, and show you some of the more advanced features that it has as well. So you can see this is the serial expander. Essentially it uses the serial bus that pretty much every radio system has now. You may have heard of things like S-Bus or EX-Bus, Spektrum Smart, Jeti EX Bus, Powerbox P2 Bus, Graupner, SumD, various different serial protocols. We won't go into the detail of what a serial protocol is, but essentially it takes all of the channel information and pushes it down a single wire. The device at the end of that wire can understand what that information is and then pull out all of the channels or any specific channel that it wants to access. That's how the serial expander works. It gets all of the channel information, it looks for the 4 that it's been told to pull out, and it outputs those to the 4 ports that you've got there, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So it's taking that serial information and passing it out. The first thing that you need to do with the serial expander is tell it which radio system that you're using, and you need the instruction manual for this, because you either have to use the bootloader, in which case it's visual in front of you and you can pick from a drop down list, and there'll be a section on that later in this video, or you can use the button to set it without anything else other than just plugging in your battery and setting the protocol type. The way that it works is very similar to programming an ESC. So you power it up in a certain condition. With an ESC you'd normally throw it with the throttle high, and then you'd wait to hear the right number of beeps and you'd move the throttle stick around. The serial expander works in a similar way. You power up with the button pressed. You've got to wait a little while before releasing it, and you'll see that shortly. You can then get to a top level menu which allows you to set different items, and then for each item you can set its value. All we're going to look at initially is just setting the radio type. So this serial expander we have here is currently set to work with a Spektrum radio, so Spektrum Smart or SRXL2 as it's technically known. What we're going to do is change it because we want to run it with a Failsafe system, so we want to put it into S-Bus mode. If we look in the manual, we'll see that Spektrum Smart is indicated by 6 flashes in the config item, and S-Bus is set by 2 flashes. So we need to change it to 2 flashes. The menu item that we want is the radio protocol, and that's the first menu item, so that's 1 flash on the menu item. So that's what we're going to go through and do right now. So the first thing that we have to do is power this up into configuration mode, and we do that by holding down the button and applying power to any of the ports. You'll see it's flashing slowly and then quickly. Once it's flashing quickly, we can release the button and it goes into the top level menu. So that red flash there, you'll see it's incrementing numbers. It's now on 4, it's now going to get to 5, and then 6, and then 7, and then 8, and then right back down to 1. When it gets to 1, we want to tap the button. So this is 8, 1. Tap the button. And I said it was already set to Spektrum, so that should be 6 blue flashes. So there's 6 blue flashes there. We want to tap the button until it rolls round and gets back to 2. You don't have to wait for that 6 to go through or the 7 to go through. You can tap the button at any point in time, and it'll briefly flash purple as it picks up the button press. Doesn't help being on a phone background. So we're now back to 1. So we want 2. So there's 2 blue flashes. So that sets us into S-Bus mode, those 2 blue flashes. We now need to come out of this back to the main menu from this point. So we'll press and hold. And you see it goes from purple to red. We can let go. We're now back in that main menu, so it's counting through 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So we've now set up S-Bus 2, so it's now in S-Bus 2 mode. This is the basics that we need to do to get it connected to the transmitter. The fastest way to configure the outputs from here is to use the assisted config, and we'll come with that shortly. But you can also use the button, and the menu items 2, 3, 4 and 5 let you set outputs 1, 2, 3 and 4 by directly entering the number. Now that we've got the basic configuration done, as a minimum set the right radio type, we need to connect the expander to the receiver. Now, we need to connect to the serial bus output of the receiver, and we just need to know what that is. So if we work through the various, some of the various options that we've got here, if we look at Spektrum, This is an AR620. Spektrum introduced the SRXL2 Spektrum Smart. For the smaller receivers, the smallest ones, it only runs on channel 1, which means you lose your throttle, which means you do have to generate the throttle as one of the outputs on the serial expander, unless you want to wire lead it with an AV and ESC. And there's separate bits in the manual you need to read about that because of the way that the AV and ESC must control the bus, and then this needs to become a passive device on the bus. That's covered in the manual. But for Spektrum, you need to connect to an SRXL2 output. On the larger receivers, there is a second port next to the throttle, which is the SRXL2 bind prog port. You can use that if you're not using a satellite. If you're using a satellite, you need to wire lead it into 1 or put it into channel 1 and generate the throttle from the expander. But for the much larger receivers, well, you probably wouldn't use an expander anyway, because if you've got a Powersafe 14 or 20, you probably don't need those extra channels. Maybe you'd use it with a 10, and you can use the dedicated SRXL2 port on there. Doesn't matter about satellites for that. For the 10 360T, that internally is very similar to a Powersafe, minus the multiple battery connections. So that works the same way. So for a Spektrum, for a simple connection, straight onto the throttle pin, and then set output 1 here to be throttle, and drive your ESC or your throttle servo from there. If we look at Futaba, so Futaba receivers, they often have an S-Bus and an S-Bus 2 output these days, depending on the receiver type. You need either will work, an S-Bus or an S-Bus 2. On this receiver, there is a dedicated S-Bus 2 output, so we can use the one at the bottom without losing any of our other channel outputs, so we can go into there. The signal goes towards the cutout on the Futaba bit, so that goes there to get it connected for a Futaba receiver. For Powerbox, we use the P2 bus. For the 5 channel it's here, for everything else it tends to be at the other end. So for that we just plug into the P2 bus on there. Of course we need to set the protocol on the expander to be P2 bus. I'll come back to Powerbox and Jeti transmitters in a moment. Because they have built-in menuing capabilities, you can actually configure the outputs using the menus on the transmitter rather than have to use the button or the assisted configuration or any of those. You can directly set it using either the Jeti box application on the Jeti or just using the sensor menu on the Powerbox. Talking of Jeti, Jeti needs to be EX bus. So you've got E1, E2, so it's the E ports. It's not the EXT. EXT is a sensor bus only, so don't try and use that. It's either E1 or E2 or E3 in some of the larger receivers. You will most likely need to configure that pin output to be EX bus using Device Manager. So if you go into the transmitter, Device Manager, go into the receiver, go into receiver outputs or alternate pin config, depending on which receiver, and set the one that you've used, so pin 6, make sure that's set to EX bus. Again, once you've set this correctly, you'll get the blue light when it's happy that it sees EX bus on there. Other receivers, so Graupner uses SUMD, and it depends on the receiver itself as to which pin becomes the SUMD pin. You have to configure it using the transmitter, and there's a menu on the transmitter. Off the top of my head, I think it goes to channel 6 on this one. It could go to channel 4. It will tell you on the transmitter which pin is the SUMD output, and you plug it into that one to get that connection. So that is how you link up the serial expander to the receivers. So here you can see I've connected the serial expander up to 4 servos, 1 on each of the outputs. We've got output 1 going here, 2, 3, 4. So we've got all 4 servos connected to the outputs. We're going to look at the auto configure or the auto setup on this. To activate that mode, we need to hold the button as we power up, release it quickly, and then press it again within 1.5 seconds. So I'll try and do this just using the receiver plug. So as we plug the power in there, so hold the button, flash in, release it, press it again. There we go. So it's now running in configuration mode, and you can see it's flashing a single red. As I toggle the button, you'll see it moves up. It's now flashing 2 reds. Click the button again, we've now got 3. Click the button again, we've now got 4. Those flashes correspond to which is the selected output on the serial expander. So if we go back to 1, you can see on the transmitter we've got the servo monitor screen up. You can see that they're moving. So if I move the throttle, you can see I've actually got 2 servos moving on the throttle at the moment, but it's currently looking at output 1. If I move rudder, you see we've got a different 2 moving, but output 1 is following that. If I move the left dial here, nothing else is attached to that, it'll pick that up. Whichever one we finish on, it'll remember that for output 1 while the power is on. We do need to save it at the end. So we'll set number 1, actually we'll set that back to throttle for 1. So 1's on throttle. We'll click the button. It's now flashing twice, so we're on number 2. We'll set number 2 to be this switch here. See, that's channel 11 on the servo monitor. You can see that servo 2 is now following that channel. Click again. Got 3 flashes. We'll set this to aileron. There we go, picked up aileron. And that's done. And we'll now set the 4th channel. There's 4 flashes, so we're doing that 4th one, and we'll set that to this one here. This, if you can see, D1, it's one of the 2 digital outputs on S-Bus, so it's using the D1 channel, so it's only got 2 positions, high or low, on or off, minus 100 plus 100. It's picked that up, so that's now detected all those 4 different combinations. To save this permanently, because at the moment it will forget it if we power off, we need to press and hold this button, and it goes back to normal operation. It's now saved that and returned to normal operation. So just to prove that, if we power cycle and come back in, if I can get the connector in, there it goes normal operation. We've got the blue LED which tells us it's picked up the bus. So we've got channel 1, we've got the switch on there. Which one did we configure? We had aileron, and we had the digital switch there. So it's picked up those 4, and they've been stored inside the serial expander. That's how you run the auto config. It works exactly the same for any radio system. It doesn't matter if you're Spektrum, Futaba, Powerbox, Jeti, FR Sky, any of the radio systems, Graupner, any of the radio systems, any of the serial buses, that auto learn works in exactly the same way. You've got to set the bus type first and make sure it's running with the right bus, so you get the blue LED when talking to your receiver. Once you've done that, you can power cycle it, hold the button down, you'll get that slow flash. As soon as you see that, release, and then click again, and it'll go into the auto learn mode with the flashing red to tell you which output it's looking at. That's how you set up auto output auto configure on there. A quick note here about failsafe and the serial expander. The serial expander doesn't generate a failsafe signal itself. It expects the failsafe to come from the serial bus. In the majority of cases, the receiver, you set the failsafe up in the receiver, doing whatever is required on your transmitter to do that. If the receiver detects failsafe, because it's the only thing that knows that it's lost signal with the transmitter, it will send an indication down the bus that's in failsafe and send the stored failsafe information as you've set. So depending upon where you are, you're most likely to have a requirement that the failsafe sets the throttle to idle as a minimum, or some equivalent definition. Failsafe is honoured by the serial expander, but it's not known by the serial expander. So if I give you an example of that, previously we saw that we configured this so that throttle was on output 1. So that could be connected to our throttle, and that could be driving our throttle on a glow engine or a petrol engine there. So we set that to full throttle. Failsafe we expect to be down here. We set that to full throttle. If we turn off the transmitter, you'll see that the servo has gone back to its failsafe position. The receiver has a red light indicating that it's in failsafe, and the serial expander also knows that there is a failsafe condition on the bus. It's showing a fast flashing red, which means it's picking up, but it's still sending through the information that the receiver is giving it. If we power back on again, then we'll see that as that comes back up, throttle high, let's take that down. Now we have control back. We've gone back to blue because everything is running again. So the serial expander will honour the failsafe, but it won't generate the failsafe. So once you've configured your system, you must ensure that failsafe is working as you expect it. So we're going to quickly go through and look at setting the output just using the button, not using the assisted configuration, but directly setting a number using that config system. It's a little more complex because we've also got fairly large channel numbers. We're in S-Bus mode for Taba, so we can go up to channel 18. But if we hold the button down, we'll get into, I didn't pick that up, I'll try again, hold the button down, go in, slow flash, fast flash, let go. So it's just gone. There's 3, I missed 2, so we'll wait for it to roll around. It will only count to 6 this time because the 8 menu items only exist for Spektrum. 1, there's 2. So we're now looking at output output 1, because we're in menu item 2. You can see there that we've got 3 flashes of the blue light. That means it's outputting channel 3. and on S-Bus, channel 3 is typically the throttle, but it's whatever you've got your transmitter set up to be on channel 3. So it's currently outputting channel 3, so we can click the button. So we're now on channel 4. Now, because channel numbers can go quite high, receivers go up to 26 channels, depending on the various radio systems. Counting 26 flashes would be a bit painful. So for the channel number, the flashes are either long or short. It's a little bit complicated. Right now, they're short flashes. If I go to channel 5, you'll see it now does one long flash. So it's like dashes and dots. Each long flash is worth 5, and each short flash is worth 1. So if I press it again, it goes to 6, and we expect to see long shorts for 6. We go long, short, long, short. So if we go 7, 8, I've now moved it forward to 9, and you can see we've got long and then 4 short. So 5 plus 4 is 9. If we press it again, we expect 2 longs because that's channel 10. There we go. If we want channel 12, press it twice more. So we've got long, long, short, short. So that's 5 and 5 and 1 and 1, which is 10 and 2, which is 12. So that's how channel 12 is indicated on there. And you can do this for all the outputs. So we've gone into menu item 2. But you can go to menu item 3, 4 and 5 to set outputs 2, 3 and 4. Obviously menu item 1 is the radio protocol, so it's kind of one out on those menu items for the outputs. That's how you can directly set the channel if you don't want to use the assisted learn, the assisted config. It's probably the far easier way to do it. You get your radio set up with the right channels that you want, and then you just put it into that mode, and it'll pick up those channels and set them to the outputs. It's a far faster way to configure the expander. Now, having made the statement that the assisted configuration, the auto-config, works the same across all radios, there is an additional helper available if you're running a Spektrum Smart connection on a Spektrum radio, and I'll just show that very quickly. So we'll go into that assisted config mode, so we'll power up with it held down, we'll tap quickly. There we go, we've already moved on to number 2 because I double tapped that, but not to worry. So we'll come back, so we're currently on output 2. And just like before, we can move our stick and it will pick it up and it will attach it to whatever stick we move. It'll pick it up in the same way. However, on your transmitter, if you scroll across to your last screen, you've got this SRXL2 decoder that you can see here. Now, if you look, it's showing you which outputs we've got and which channels they're mapped to. So output 2 has got a little chevron by it. As we press the button, you'll see that chevron move. So it's indicating that we're now using output 3, output 4, and it cycles round. So we can attach those, and you'll see it pick it up. So if we go to output 2, like that, 2 is usually aileron. There we go. Go to 3, set it for elevator. Go to 4, you see the chevron moving. We'll go to rudder. Channel 4, and you can see the channels are indicated on there. This is only an 8 channel, but if you have a greater than 12 channel, so you've got what was the X Plus channels, the X Plus 1 through 8 or 13 through 20 as the more recent radios now refer to them, you'll see them appear as X1 to X8 on that channel output as well. So for Spektrum, you do get that additional what's called a text gen screen, which is the last screen on your transmitter normally, that just helps you through that assisted config section. So just running through how you can configure it on the Jeti transmitters using the Jeti Box application. You'll notice this is all connected and powered up. We've got the blue light on the serial expander, so it is already talking Jeti EX bus. You may need, as I mentioned, you may need to program or set the output on your receiver so that it's running in EX bus mode, and you do that using the Device Explorer, which is down here under the model menu. Go into the receiver, go into alternative pin configuration here, and you'll see that I'm connected to pin 6, and pin 6 is E2, which is configured for EX bus, as you can see just here. So it's already set up for EX bus. You may need to change that to make it work so you have an EX bus output to do that. From here, we can go and set the outputs of the expander directly. So we can do that using the Jeti Box application. So we come down to Applications, go into Jeti Box. This is the most likely opening view that you get. So it's currently showing the transmitter configuration items through Jeti Box. We can go right, so I press the right button here, the function key under right, to get to the RX configuration. Press it again, and it starts looking at the sensor bus. We now need to go down and we get into the expander. So we're now in the expander menu. As we work down through here, we get the top level items in that. If you look at the manual, there is a flow chart in the kind of normal Jeti style about how all this fits together. So you can navigate through this. Output rate, everything is the same output rate. It's currently set for 50 Hertz, but you can go up to 333 Hertz. We're now looking at output 1. To start editing that, we need to go into it, and you see you've now got the 3 dots appear after 1. That means we're in the kind of side menu. So we can now go down, and here is where we set the channel. So we can go left and right using the 2 function keys underneath the arrows to set the channel number, whatever we want it to be. And that allows us to directly set the output channel that's on here. To go into channel 2, output 2, we need to come back into the main. So we've got 3 dots. We want to come back to the main menu. The dots go down 1, go into the output 2 menu, and then go down. It's currently channel 11. Let's set that to 5. That'll do. Go back up to the output. Go back. We can then, if we want, go down to 3, for example. We keep going through setting those. At the moment, this is only changing in memory. You do have to save it. If you go into any of these and go right down to the bottom, you've got store settings, press left and right. So if you press those 2 together, left and right at the same time, it'll jump back. So we've jumped back to a menu position. That means it has saved it, and it will now remember that after the power cycle. So again, from there, we can go back into that and come back up to the top level. That's how you use the Jeti Box menu in the Jeti Box application on the transmitters. This will show you how you configure the serial expander when you're using the Powerbox Core or Atom radio systems running over P2 bus. The expander's out of shot. Those that use the Powerbox radio systems know that if the receiver is anywhere near the transmitter, it starts to swamp the output. So it needs to be a little way away for a good signal link. It'll work for a long distance, but not close up. To get into the configuration, you need a menu item. You need a sensor item because you've got to access the menu on the serial expander. It has a dummy menu, a dummy sensor item in there called menu that just allows you to put something on the screen so you can access it to get through to that. So if we, from here, if we go into that item, you go here, we can access the menu. The system will load up the menu, and then the first page is just an overview. So you can see the outputs that you've got set there from that. So we go to the next page, we go through one output at a time. So we've got the channels set here. We can move through the channels just using the keys. We've got some additional items here. These also exist on Jeti, and they also exist on JR DFA radios as well. We'll talk about JR DFA in a little bit. You can actually use, you can send multiple outputs can have the same channel. That then kind of gives you Matchbox-like functionality, so you can adjust the midpoint and the endpoints. So you can use this to adjust for multiple servos coming off the same channel should you want to, and that low scale, high scale and midpoint give you that adjustment. You can also reverse a particular output as well based on the channel that's there. So you've got that capability if you want to use that. But we can go through each of the outputs, adjust the channel that we want, and that's there. What we do have to do, just like everything else, is save the changes, because at the moment they're only in memory. They're not saved to the long-term storage on the serial expander. And to do that, on each screen you've got this save configuration screen, so save config. A little button called activate. Click that, it'll go green, and that's saved it. Every time you click, regardless of whether it says activate or deactivate, it will save the contents to the long-term memory, so it will be there when you power cycle it and bring it back on again. That's how you can simply configure the outputs using the Powerbox Core or Atom radio. Just to briefly mention about the JR radio. So with JR, the serial expander actually looks like the XB1CV4, which is the original JR X-Bus expander module. The serial expander actually came from there when JR stopped manufacturing back in, was it 2015, 2016? That's when we designed the serial expander, and that was resold by the JR distributor in the UK and JR Americas as well, to fill that gap in the market. So it was just a clone of the XB1CV4. It now still has all that functionality in there. It's a bigger system, a slightly different design, but that's all in there, so you can still use it as an XB1CV4. And if you plug it into an XBus connection on your JR radio, then you can directly access that, and you just treat it as if it was that. Download the instructions for the XB1CV4 and it follows that, and it will work in exactly the same way. So again, you can assign multiple different XBus channels or sub IDs if you're familiar with XBus to the outputs. You can then adjust the outputs using the transmitter screen that you get with the JR DFA transmitters, and that gives you that full capability to do that.
And the final section, using the bootloader to configure the serial expander. We went through the bootloader in a separate video. I'll put a link to that in the comment section below. So I'm not going to go into the details of how you set up the bootloader or connect the dongle and so on. I'll assume you've already got a serial expander connected to the dongle, as shown in the bootloader video itself. But we would need to find the port, open that up, and we can see here we've got the serial expander connected. Now we can configure. We can also update the firmware. So when new firmware is released, if you download a new bootloader, it will appear in this list, and then you can pick the new version, click update firmware, and it will update the firmware for you. You should always check your settings after the update. Some updates change them, some don't, but just check that before you run the update. But if we look at the configuration side, because that's what we're really here to see for this one. So this is showing the configuration screen for the serial expander. We used the button earlier to set the radio type, but here you can simply pick it from the list. So JRD DMSS for XBus link, Jeti EX bus, Spektrum Smart, P2 bus. You simply click from the drop-down list that you want. In terms of the channels, you can type in the number or configure them as you want them to be. The output rate, you can set it up if you're running digital servos. You may want a faster output rate. Depending upon the system that you're running, there could be a gyro in there. It's somewhere along the serial bus. You may want to use a faster rate to take advantage of that gyro. We don't typically recommend putting primary flight services through any bus expander, not just ours. Of course it does, and we also do that. It does work. With this version 2 expander, there's enhanced power distribution as well. You can connect a separate power connection to the power socket that's next to the RX socket on the expander. If you want to get even more power, you need a spare port in your receiver to deliver that power. But you can connect that up, and then you get more power available for the servos connected to the 4 output ports. There are some other options in here. The manual does describe these, but very briefly. For Powerbox, there's a normal and a passive mode. Normal, it interacts with the Powerbox. Passive mode, it doesn't. It just sits there and silently listens. You may want that if it's running between a receiver and something else. So if you've got PBR26Ds that you're connecting to another system, you may want to have this sitting silently, sniffing the channel data and not talking back, not being a sensor, but just directly running and outputting extra channels. Of course, if you do that, you can't use the Powerbox menus to program it. You have to set it using the assisted learn or direct setting using the button. If we go to the Spektrum Smart mode, we get 2 additional options for the Spektrum system. Sensor ID, this is to do with how it operates on the serial bus itself. It's described in the manual. Basically, if you're Y-leading it with an avian, you want to set it to passive, and if you are Y-leading it with a satellite, and it's often used for helicopter setups where you're using the 6250 fly-barless controller that's a receiver as well. You can Y-lead this with the external satellite and generate extra outputs for winches and lights and retracts and other things on your helicopter where the default receiver doesn't give you enough output pins. So that's why you'd use disabled. Text gen support, you can turn that off. If you turn that off, you don't get that SRXL2 decoder screen, so you won't get that screen that's there. You don't need the screen that's there, but you won't get it if you turn that off. Why would you want to turn that off? If you also have an Avian ESC, the Avian ESC also uses that same screen, and essentially you get a combination of the two lines, and it just looks strange. There's no operational issue, there's no performance or risk issue with that. It just looks very strange, and it means you can't access the Avian configuration screen, which is done through that text gen menu. You can't access that, so if you turn this off, then it will stop it overwriting some of the Avian stuff, and you'll have the normal functionality there. If you want to use the assisted setup and you have an Avian, unplug the Avian, plug this in, do that, then disable the text gen, and you can do that through the button menu item as well, and then you can carry on using that. We saw in the Jeti and Powerbox specific sections that we had these additional options on the output, so we can reverse them, we can adjust the midpoint, low points, and endpoints. You can do that here as well. It's not really practical because you don't know what you're adjusting it to. So if you're trying to balance a servo, you'd need to come in here, set it, hook it back up to the model, see where you are. This is just to allow you to set them back to 0 or adjust them if necessary. But in reality, that matchbox functionality and that balancing functionality is only practically available for JR, Powerbox, and Jeti radios. So that's what we have there. Once you've made the changes, close, we can save the configuration. We'll get a brief flash on the serial expander, and that configuration is now saved. We can reboot, and we now have the configuration we want on the expander. It's as simple as that. So that's the end of this this video on the serial expander. I hope you found that useful. I hope it's covered what you need to know. If there's anything you think we've missed, please let us know. We can always add or release additional information. And good luck flying.